Press hockey coverage with Jim Biringer.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is the Full Press NHL podcast. I'm your host, Jim Biringer, voice of Full Press Hockey, part of Full Press Media. I'm joined by a great friend of mine, great analyst, Florida Panthers. We can talk all NHL. Kirby Lupul from Cats and Rats. Check him out on YouTube. I've been up on his show multiple times, but I get the pleasure of having him on my show for the very first time. Kirby, what's going on?
How's it going, Jim? And I'm just as excited to be here because we have you come by for our NHL After Darks, which again is going to be debuting for its second season Saturday night here in a couple of weeks when the season kicks off here. We're going to have you come by as a semi-regular guest. We'd love to have your community come by on those nights. We don't just talk Panthers. We go all around the NHL.
Yeah, no, it's going to be great. I can't wait to jump on with you guys on After Dark. And it's a little after dark as we record, as everybody will see this bright and early on a Sunday morning. Let's get into it. Big news. Not the greatest of news, as you and I are wrestling guys, so we got some bad news for you, as Bad News Barrett would say. Aleksander Barkov, captain, number one center, heart and soul, torn ACL, torn MCL, harmless-looking play on practice on Thursday, goes down non-contact injury, surgery, out for the season, diagnosed 7 to 9 months, could be back if they get to a cup final. Your thoughts, initial thoughts on the injury?
Yeah, I didn't see it right away. Picked up my phone, refreshed my timeline, phone's going off with all the messages, and I'm like, some fans were looking at it from an optimistic standpoint, Jim, where it's like, maybe it's not as bad as it looks. Right away, I thought, season ending. I've seen Barkov go down before, and I'm kind of like, okay, maybe he's all right. Maybe it's just day-to-day, maybe at worst, week-to-week. I didn't feel it in this situation. The more I read about it, the more I saw reports on it. Obviously, Cam and Strick podcast came out, and I do take content creators and NHL media guys that are really connected. I take their word for it like 70, 80% of the time, that where they're hearing this from, it's just not playing telephone tag. There was a lot of people messaging me that said word got out at the rink that it's like they're fearing the ACL, and then it kind of went like wildfire with everyone. But I'm like, it's a little bit more than that when different people are reporting. Empty Netters came out and said it's not looking good. I had someone tell me 40 minutes beforehand, I didn't get to my DMs, that said, yeah, Kirby's likely done for the season here. So it's a big blow. It's a lot of soul searching for us as Panther fans. But again, Jim, I look at it differently. I'm an OG Panther fan. I've been a fan since 1993. I've been through harder things than this.
Yeah, right? I can say, yeah, definitely. That's a long time, by the way. Congrats for sticking with your team since 1993. A lot of guys would have jumped off the bandwagon. Or
the Luongo trade. A lot of people were jumping off then when he went to Vancouver. They became Capitals fans. Oh, who's this Ovechkin guy? You know, player fans. They jumped off completely being a fan of a team because of what Panthers ownership did to them. Right. So I had no one around me in Canada. I'm up here in Canada. I had no one around me that was a Panther fan by the time that Luongo was moved out and things like that. Now you see, long story short, hundreds of Panthers jerseys in every arena around the league. That's what happens when you win. But yeah, I'm trying not to feel too down about this, but obviously, and we'll get into this, Jim, it's going to change my predictions that we've already been doing here over the last couple of weeks. I think it does definitely change that within the Atlantic Division.
Yeah, and you and I are on the same page. We kind of think alike when it comes to these types of injuries. And when we see video, I even put out a tweet. I'm like, yeah, this doesn't look good. Non-contact injuries. Those are the ones that you fear the worst, because contact injury, okay. These non-contact ones are the worst ones, you know, ACL. And I jumped on your space when I was driving, and I heard you had a medical guy on, and he was talking about ACL, MCL. And it's funny, like everybody's like, oh, we're going to have to wait to hear what the team has to say. I'm like, brother, they already know. I'm like, they already know. They know how bad it is. And Maurice kind of said it yesterday on Friday when he was like, yeah, I had my day to be sad. He knew Thursday. Everybody knew. And you can kind of see, I kind of said it, you know, that he threw a stick. Players kind of know when they're upset, and they know things are bad. Like you said, it changes the dynamic because the Panthers play a certain way, and they go as Barkov goes.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was whole thing of Maurice working out. The story when Maurice came in, people forget this. The fans were chanting "Fire Paul Maurice." It was very tumultuous start. They're like, he's a career loser, Kirby. He's coming over from Winnipeg to our team now. We want Andrew Brunette here. There were so many takes at the time and just really going at Paul Maurice. And in the marketplace, I don't think it got out to the national media as much because Florida at the end of the day is a mid-market at best. So I think those messages weren't getting out there, but those boobers, they were getting loud, and there were signs at the arena, fire Paul Maurice. But that season, a lot of credit went to Matthew Tkachuk, Brandon Montour having a career year, and even a guy like Eetu Luostarinen who really thrived under Paul Maurice. A lot of other guys weren't. Lundell was learning the Paul Maurice system. Barkov was not what he was until that 2023 playoffs where he took another step forward that we all wanted to see as a franchise-defining player. Guys on the back end, Gustav Forsling hadn't hit that mark yet that he ended up achieving. Bobrovsky coming in with that big contract from Columbus, he hadn't found that mark yet. So a lot of guys hadn't found their game under Paul Maurice, and Paul Maurice is more of a veteran-laden coach as is. And when we were using 2023 as a gap year, as Bill Zito said, you're bringing in the Eric Stahls off of PTOs and veteran guys through the lineup, Mark Stahl, his brother. So it was a very interesting kind of dynamic at that time from where we were then, from where we are now. But now you see what Sam Bennett did here this past year, coming off the Conn Smythe, now getting paid the big money, $8 million. You got Anton Lundell. I am so high on this kid, but now he's going to be put under the spotlight here, and I know you're going to mention some stuff on it. So we have pieces there to be, a third-place team in the Atlantic Division, contending for a wild card spot, and I'm fine with us being an underdog because I saw what this team did in 2023 under Paul Maurice. Yeah, no,
I'm glad you mentioned Anton Lundell because – they're going to have to replace Barkov, and you can't replace him. He's irreplaceable, right? Everybody's said it. But you look at a guy like Anton Lundell. They drafted him high, and we have yet to see this kid's untapped offensive ability. I mean, in his draft year, I went and looked up some scouting reports, and everybody was looking at, this kid's offensively gifted. He's going to be a great defender, great two-way player, but he's got so much offense. And you saw it like during the World Juniors. You've seen it in World Championships. He's got these offensive hands, and you kind of saw it during their run to the 2025 Stanley Cup. You saw that offensive ability come out. And I had mentioned this to somebody at the rink. We were talking at a broadcaster from Finland, and I had Russ Cohen next to me. And I'm like, if Bennett leaves, Lundell's going to be the second-line center. He's going to have this offensive output. I just didn't know Barkov was going to go down. And I think I'm glad they moved up the entire line to be the second line of Luostarinen, Brad Marchand, and Lundell, because I don't want to break up that chemistry. But I could see Lundell at some point being the 1C just in case some things don't work out.
Yeah, especially early on here, Jim, I can kind of get into that a little bit, how I kind of see it playing out. You might not see it right now, but I kind of like looking ahead with that extra foresight. I also want to add on Anton Lundell. How many guys at his age have played this many Stanley Cup playoff games, Stanley Cup final games? You're going back to the 80s, 90s. And as well, I think he really performed on the biggest stage at Four Nations against Sweden that Saturday night prelude game to USA Canada. I said that day Anton Lundell was one of the best players on the ice that Saturday with all four nations combined there. So if you really looked at that game, I know Kelly Rudy gave him high praise on air during the Sportsnet intermission game there.
Yeah, so, I was there for that game. He was very noticeable in that game. He was very, very noticeable.
And that shows me on a big stage, he can handle that. And that's the biggest stage when you're playing best on best, even versus playing in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And he's so calm in the playoffs. He plays his best hockey. I will also say on Anton Lundell, I think he was our best, if not Barkov, but our best player, if you look at the 23 run, the 24 run, the 25 run combined, all series combined, because there's been guys that had some bad series here and there. Tkachuk went invisible for certain series. So I think Anton Lundell is a full body work, those three playoffs. And again, we didn't have all the guys there, Marchand and Jones and all those guys, but I think he's been our best player collectively on those three runs. So again, I think they're going to maybe break that lineup, Jim. And I really like personally, and some people don't see where I'm coming from here, but I've seen him play with Matthew Tkachuk. When Matthew Tkachuk comes back in the lineup, I would love to see a line of Tkachuk, Lundell, Reinhart with Barkov out. I think that is a top first line in the whole NHL. And you get to see Tkachuk in a first line situation that you normally don't with Aleksander Barkov. They don't pair them together too often.
No, I would love to see that, to be honest, because I think Lundell allows Reinhart and Tkachuk to be themselves. I'm not sure Bennett fits what they want to do at that top line right now. That's just my opinion. Again, I'm not there at everyday camp seeing what these guys are doing. through line rushes.
And just to jump in there too, Jim. Sorry. I think if you have a line of Bennett, Tkachuk, and Mackie Samoskevich, that's a line that you're going to have to insulate, and it's not going to be able to do anything defensively.
No, exactly. So I like Lundell. To me, he just fits the mold. Plus, he's a roller hockey guy too. So I love him too. I love him when he's skating with the roller hockey.
Have you played with him? He goes.
No, I seen him out there though. I really like the fact that he's on his blades in the summer doing it. I don't know if the coaching staff likes it, but
I'm a rollerblade guy like you, even up here in Canada. I'm probably a better rollerblader than ice hockey players.
Hey, you know what? We like that. You got to do that. So, but like looking at Lundell, right? Like he can play in all the positions, power play. He can do penalty kill. He can do 5-on-5. He's just one of those complete guys. And to me, and he's filled in for Barkov when we don't want to use the word load management, but we'll kind of use it because last year he kind of played on the top line a little bit when Barkov was in and out, and he looked really good. And I think he can take that next step. But another guy to me, I think I'm going to circle on this roster because there's so much potential there. And Paul Maurice is getting the best out of him is Jesper Boqvist.
Yeah, interesting. Jesper Boqvist is a guy that I kind of thought, okay, when we have to move someone out here, are we moving out one Erod or are we moving out 2-3 Panther players? And I think if you went that option avenue, because they really believe in Erod, and now it's very important to have a guy like that because they're now experimenting with him at center, and he's kind of that Swiss Army knife. We've seen the same with Jesper Boqvist in the playoffs. I called it, he got the Charlie Chocolate Factory golden ticket when he got to play with Reinhart and Barkov in the playoffs. So we made this little funny meme and gif, and he scored a goal and he played quite well with them. He played well in the Carolina series as well when he kind of moved up the lineup. But I think that's a guy that is a bit expendable when you are healthy. But now with these injuries to Tkachuk, to Barkov, it's not just two guys, Jim. It feels like it's more than that. And you have to shuffle guys in and out the lineup. We've got the PTO guys now. You've got Jesper Boqvist, as you mentioned, down there with Gadjevich and Greer, and I think Greer's a staple in the lineup. And then you've got the guys that are down there in Charlotte. And I think our best prospects right now, if you're looking right now, come from our forward ranks, not from our back end or not from the goaltending position. Guys that are ready right now, we've got a few in Charlotte.
Yeah, talk about a couple of those guys, if you don't mind, for a minute, Kirby. Because I look at that, because with the new rules, with Barkov can go on LTIR, but if it's regular season, they're going to have to figure out their lineup come the playoffs if he comes back. And I think that's where the scouting department, and I know some people chirp me and be like, well, they already got their money, they've earned their paycheck. Well, now they're going to earn their paycheck a little bit more because this is where your pro scouting department, your amateur scouting department comes into play because these guys that you said that are down in the AHL coming up, they're going to have to fill in. And maybe somebody comes out there that Panther fans aren't familiar with.
Yeah, and this is very complex situation. So I'll try to explain it within our fan base, and I think people will be interested, especially if they're interested in prospects. I look at it like twofold, threefold. There's so many different moving parts here, but with our fan base, they're like, no, don't rush the prospects. Let's let them maturate in Charlotte. I'm like, first off, we don't need many of them. We just need one or two of them to pop. And why are we going to wait for them to marinate down there when Bill Zito kind of says, F them picks, and he always moves kids out, picks out, and all that type of stuff. Let's see what they are. Let's maximize their value. And if they're good, then they'll stick with the club. If not, then we can maybe make a trade for them. But if you wait too long with the Jack Devines of the world, the Mackie Samaskeviches of the world, we've got a couple other young guys down there, Hunter St. Martin. I'm really high on Grayson Sachin. Unfortunately, all these guys aren't going to be able to stay with the Panthers when they have this core like never before, locked in 9-10 guys, right? So let's see what they look like now with Barkov and Tkachuk on the lineup. I don't think you're rushing them by any means. And I think they might be better options than some of the veteran guys you have further down the lineup in the PTO guys, like a guy like Jack Devine. I know they have Mackie that they want to work in there. I don't think that's being ultra aggressive there. We see the Carolina Hurricanes and Dallas Stars do this all the time. And I'm like, why can't we do that as an organization with the Panthers? We've never drafted well historically, but now I'm starting to see that corner turn a little bit. And I'm like, maybe these guys can fit in the lineup. And if they don't, Jim, you go make a big trade and put 2 or 3 of these guys in a deal for an impact center.
Yeah, no, and you've seen it. Detroit's done this over the years. New Jersey was famous for this over the years. These teams draft well. They get their players. They come out. I mean, look, Henrik Zetterberg, Pavel Datsyuk, 2 guys are going to the Hall of Fame. They married the AHL. They brought him in for cup runs in 2002, and they were impacted
with the big boys.
Exactly. These guys can do it. And then they had their own run in 2008 and 2009. Yeah, Detroit didn't win 2009, but They understood what it took to win. At some point, these kids have marinated to where they have to go into the lineup. I know we're talking Panthers, but I just want to say this. I remember in 2000, Gomez, Madden, Rafalski. Rafalski was an unsigned guy, impact rookie. Gomez came up, impact rookie. John Madden came up, impact rookie. They all made an impact for the Devils that year throughout the season. The Panthers have those players. Panthers have those players.
Sorry to interrupt. They had question marks too. Scott Gomez was an undersized center playing in that area. It's not today's game. He had a lot of question marks. Rafalski probably did, as you mentioned, undrafted, you said, right? Yep. So he probably had questions too. And look at no further than Carolina Hurricanes, who our fan base likes to crap on a lot because we have a number. But this is a team that's constantly going on deep runs. Look what they did last year. They threw Scott Moore into the deep end, and he didn't do well. And they had Nikushkin back there on the blue line as well. So they threw some kids in there that weren't quite ready to go, but they had no other choice in some realm. But I think the Panthers are a little bit better situated for that, especially up front. Now on the back end, maybe not. Maybe a guy like Mike Benny needs a little bit more time. But a guy like that, he's been down there in Charlotte for a while. I know he's undersized, but you can't just baby him down there forever. Is he a top 4 guy for us going forward, or is he bust? Yeah, I think he's one or the other. And you kind of got to figure out that as you go along. If Aaron Ekblad goes down with an injury, you got to throw some of these kids in there.
Yeah, and like you said, their defense right now is, set, knock wood. Same with their offensive group. I mean, look, it's hard to replace Barkov. Kachuk's there, no 6 down 2. Like, those are 3 impact guys that were in and out of the lineup last year. But if internally, and I think they'll start the season this way, internally, hey, if guys aren't performing, all right, we're going to have to make a move. Well, right now, there ain't a lot of options to go looking for. And
the worst time.
It's the worst time because no one knows who they are, what they have. Look, I saw a lot of fans, the big name everybody talks about, and it's not, and I'm not even pointing to Sidney Crosby or Malkin. Everybody looks at Calgary, Nazem Kadri, all that. I'm like, okay, that's great. He can fit this team. He's played number 1 center before. He did it in Colorado, but he was also on a cheaper contract, and he still has years remaining. If he had 1 or 2 years left on his deal, I'd be like, all right, that's a move you can make, and you can live with $7 million if the Flames only want to retain a little bit. But he's 3 years left, including this year. So 4 years left. It's like, do I want to bring that in? Not really, because I know Barkov's coming back. He's a great fit, don't get me wrong. But there isn't a lot of options out there right now.
Yeah, we're going to get into this on our podcast a bit, and you probably haven't seen this angle a lot, Jim, because when people – I've never been a champion in my life with any of my teams, so this has been very surreal over these past years. But when you are a champion, and we have people come into our post-game shows, and they're from fans from all over the league, and I remember one guy came in, and he was like, Atu Lustaran, and that guy's a top 6 forward for sure. I'm like, what are you watching? He's like, I'm watching him in the playoffs. I'm like, yeah, that's his best hockey, but you watch him for 82 games a year. I don't want to depend on him as a top 6 winger for us. I'd love him as a third line center, which again, he's moved off his natural position to wing. But I think with the Sam Bennett signing and the long-term contract, that nixed a lot of stuff. Now, the Barkov injury makes things a little bit more spicy and interesting on that front. But I think if we didn't bring Bennett back, we would be looking at a Nazem Kadri. We'd be looking at, but then you ask yourself, well, what draft capital do you have? What can you do to make a trade, right? So it's nice to have Sam Bennett right now for this insurance policy, but it's also kind of jammed us up on getting a Nazem Kadri, giving Grayson Sachin a promotion within the organization. So there's been different things there. And now people are saying, well, Anton Lundell, you go be the 1C. Why shouldn't Sam Bennett be the 1C? He's getting paid all the big money in the 2C. But Paul Maurice doesn't depend on him responsibly in his own end for defensive matchups and things like that. So now Anton Lundell, is thrown into the deep end a little bit here with the Aleksander Barkov injury. I think he can thrive a bit, but you're also asking a lot of the kid.
Yeah, I mean, like let's play out the season hypothetically. I mean, everybody likes to do this. This is what we do, right? This is the business everybody chose, right? So hypothetically, we're here. Trade deadline comes around. Word comes out of Pittsburgh, Malkin, because he's made comments about, oh, hey, maybe, you never know. I could be open to it. Though we know he wants to be a Penguin for life, finish his career with Sid and Chris Letang, and congratulations to the Flower and those guys for having fun on a Saturday night in Pittsburgh, reuniting at least. That's fun to see.
And I'll just add Erik Karlsson sinking them.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, well,
I'm not an Erik Karlsson guy.
Yeah, well, I wasn't a big fan of the trade. I'll just say that. But would you be entertained or open to the idea of bringing in a Malkin type player?
Yeah, I would. And I've heard his name from some of my co-hosts and some people in our community dating back before I was doing this content world stuff the last 4 years plus here. So I think that's a name that's always been attached to, like, what would Malkin look like without Crosby? Kind of that Batman and Robin. And we haven't heard that as much out in Edmonton with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. But even Hockey Night in Canada did an interview, I want to say about 6, 7, 8 years ago. Malkin, have you thought of what would it be like? And he's like, I gave it some thought, and I've thought stuff like that, but I wanted to stay here in Pittsburgh. So I think it's a guy that's always kind of played around with it in his mind. And South Florida being a big Russian population, we've got Kulikov, Bobrovsky on the team. I don't know what his personal workings and relationships are with those guys, but I think that's a guy that can fit. Now, you would have to answer this for me, Jim. You know a little bit the league better than me. How much gas does this guy have left in the tank? Would he fit the Maurice system? But I think what we've seen with Paul Maurice and these Florida Panthers, the buy-in is real. And all the people that doubted Seth Jones last year and said, Brad Marchand's had some injuries. He hasn't looked so good in Boston over the last year and a half. I don't put it past anything. If Zito and Maurice are bringing in someone that people think's washed or their best years are behind them, I don't think that, because he's got a lot of players still to play with here on the wing. Sam Reinhart, Carter Verhaeghe, Brad Marchand, as I mentioned. Now you've got Anton Lundell Bennett down the middle of the ice, which makes his job easier as a centerman. You also have that option maybe when Barkov comes back too, to ask Malkin to move to the wing. So I think there is a lot of things that can work there. How much does Pittsburgh retain? The deal's got a year or two left?
No, this is last year.
Last year. Okay.
Yeah, so last year on the deal. There's reports that this could be his final year, though. He's, depending on how he plays, he said he'd be open to playing more. But it all depends on how he plays. But yeah, I agree. I mean, again, if the cost probably wouldn't be as high as if it was for a Kadri type player, like a guy that could just come in with some term. I think it would work because, like you said, the buy-in. We've seen Malkin do it without Crosby. Like, Crosby was injured for many years. Like, a couple of seasons he's been out, long stretches of time. By the way, everybody forgets, Evgeny Malkin won the Conn Smythe Trophy in 2009 for the Pittsburgh Penguins. He's a top 100 player, even though he wasn't listed as one. I still believe he's a top 100 player. Sure. And I think, look, Brad Marchand, everybody said last year was kind of washed up, injuries, this, that, like you said. I think he got rejuvenated down in Florida. I think the same thing would happen with Malkin. You come in, winning atmosphere, winning culture. Like you said, guys buy in right away.
He has to be the man in a sense with Tkachuk and Barkov not around.
Right.
He's used to that,
Right. He could be the
man. Reinhart doesn't want to be that. Bennett doesn't want to be that. Verhaeghe doesn't want to be that. Ekblad, even as a veteran, he's pretty quiet at times. Like, you get a guy like Malkin come in and he's like, I get a feel of what this would have been like 6 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, and I thought he was going to leave in 2022, I think, before he signed that deal with or 2023 after they lost to the Rangers.
There was one time before that, too, he could have left.
Yeah, no, it's 2022 this summer when Raquel and all those guys came back when I thought he was out. But, look, I think he would be a great fit for there. But other than that, it's, so hard to gauge it right now because the season's just got underway. Mason McTavish he just signed his deal in Anaheim.
Yep.
There's not many centers out there and everybody's looking for one. So, and no one, and if I look at centers and I'm like, well, who really fits in Florida? They kind of have it already. They like that to me is where they're going to stay until they really need an issue where they need to address it. That's when they'll address it.
I had a name in a perfect team, and I want to also throw it to you as well. For the deadline, or not the deadline, for the first initial talks where Zito will get going. I was thinking American Thanksgiving. You can let me know on that, but I was thinking that's where it is. But then again, you're waiting a month and a half, 2 months probably here. And then you get into the holiday freeze break. So you let me know on that, Jim. But I thought a perfect team would be, if they weren't in a situation where they're trying to be a playoff contending team, would be the LA Kings. Anze Kopitar in his last year, he's going to be retiring. And even a guy like that's been mentioned to our community from some Western Conference fans, they said a guy like Philip Deneau would work in perfect with us. But again, I don't know if LA's looking to move guys out where they're at right now.
No, I think they want to make the playoffs, and I think they view those guys, and they want to see who's going to take the next step. And I think Kopitar wants to be a lifetime King. So I don't think he would move. Deneau, maybe, because I think Deneau would be okay with it, but I think they want to make the playoffs. There's so many teams out there. Like, that's why I said I don't think Kadri's moving right now unless the Flames really tail off. Craig Conroy's made it clear he wants his team to compete for a playoff spot. Like, they were right there last year. So, I mean, look, but
I don't want a guy like Jack Rothosvik. That's further down than Deneau. I would rather go with what we have internally. That's me.
Right, and then there's been some ties to say, oh, Evgeny Kuznetsov has been reportedly linked to Florida. I mean, that's a good addition.
That's a spicy meatball.
That's a spicy meatball because, again, you better fall in or you're out. Like, this isn't Carolina. This isn't Washington. This isn't Montreal. This is Florida. Like, there's expectations to do your job here. And if Evgeny Kuznetsov, to be nice to him, isn't really a defensively good player.
And that's what we have in Sam Bennett that I told you.
So yeah, exactly. That doesn't fit. So again, you need to, like I said, I think the best option is to stay internal, because right now that's what you have and what you can do. But don't make no mistake about it. Bill Zito knows what he wants to do, and he'll get it done when he sees the right time is to pull the trigger.
Yeah, just quick, Jim. I think they want to see what Erod's looking like in camp, which is an interesting move at center. I think he eventually goes back to wing. That's my personal take. And you got a guy that I would like to see as our third line center early in the season, maybe a couple weeks in if it's not working with Erod, is a guy Eetu Luostarinen. That's his natural position, coming over from Carolina. Played 4C for us. Might have got a little bit of 3C time, but that was when I think we had a line established of the Reinhart, Lundell, Lusto. And before that was Mason Marchment with Reinhart and Lundell. That was the best third line in hockey that season, like we saw last year with Marchand, Lusto, and Lundell being the best third line in hockey when they were formed after the trade deadline there.
Yeah, and I know we're talking about like replacing players and everything. I got to ask you this one. I know I didn't put this on the rundown, but it came into my head because you have Daniil Tarasov there, and you have Sergei Bobrovsky, who's eligible for his extension now. What do you think Florida does with him in terms of term AAV for a guy like Bob?
Yeah, we'll get into Bob first, and I'll talk about Tarasov just a little bit. And then there's another goalie as well that kind of is in the long-term plan phase right now. With the goaltending department, by the way, with Roberto Luongo, Rob Tallis, Louis Luongo. They also had Francois Allaire at one time, I think, consulting for them. So they got one of the best goaltending departments in all the NHL. And a lot of teams emulate what the Panthers are doing there. Bob, I've heard some chatter, nothing that I want to put out on tweets or anything like that, but I'm thinking they're looking at him at a 3 or 4 year deal. They think he has a lot of hockey left in him, and that's why they moved Spencer Knight out in the Seth Jones deal. I don't think a lot of the fan base is with that 3-4 year plan, but you look at what Brad Marchand signed for. You look how they're extending all these guys through that window, and they see Bob there. They see Bob a leader in that room. He's the best conditioned athlete on the Panthers, and guys really look up to Bob, even though he's in the goaltending position, just like they do with Barkov. He leads by example. And I think if you offer, I won't get into it completely here with you today, but if there was a Connor McDavid trade that was ever on the table, Edmonton would probably be asking for Bob, and Florida would probably actually stop at there. They might not stop at the Bennett's, Forslings, other names, but I think they would stop at Bob because this is their win now window. And you need to have a goalie like Bob in there because we just moved out our goalie of the future in Spencer Knight. So I don't think you can rely on Tarasov, and our youngster Kirill Gerasimiak that's just coming over from Russia now has looked good in rookie camp. I think he's 2-3 years maybe away if they're looking at him as a goalie as the future. Because I think we might lose Tarasov if he plays so well this year like you've seen here in training camp. So I think they want to lock Bob in. They might do it sometime during the season here. Again, he's a pending UFA. And I think a deal, you're looking at a 3-4 year deal, and they would try to bring the AAV down. I don't know what your thoughts are on the AAV there, but it could be a 4-year term.
Yeah, I think they'll go 3-4 years, and they're going to make it where, like the other contracts we see with Bennett, with Ekblad, with Marchand, that towards the end they're buyout proof. Like even with the cap going up, they'll buyout proof. Like you get Bob at 4 times 5 or whatever it is, 5.5.
Buyout the last year.
Yeah, the buyout's fine in the last year or whatever, and he's an aging goalie. Like you get everybody set up perfectly because everything seems to align with that 2030 season. And again, the advantage that the Panthers have. And by the way, people, it's not the no state income tax, despite what Brad Marchand says, because he wants to troll everybody. It's the fact that the cap is going up. They have the advantage over other teams previously because they lived in a flat cap world. If Tampa had a cap going up, everybody would still be on that team. If Colorado lived in a flat cap world, everybody would still be on that team. So that's the difference Florida has. That's their advantage. The cap is going up. All these contracts can fit in.
Yeah, I'll perfectly stated there, Jim. I wanted your take on the Bobrovsky thing too, because you have some insider knowledge. Maybe you don't have it today, but I'd love you to shoot it my way when you do hear about it. I don't think he has any interest, 1, to leave Florida, and 2, to maybe retire, and 3, if he doesn't retire, go play in the KHL maybe. That's my feelings on it all.
Yeah, I mean, from people I've talked to early on about it, I think he wants to definitely extend, and I think he's going to do it sometime this season. It could be, we could see it as a Verhaeghe thing. Game 1, it could be that night. and they're saying, okay, hey, Bob's our guy for a little bit longer. Now we're going to groom the next guy. Who's the next guy? And that would
build good faith with the organization. Not that there isn't, but this recent Aleksander Barkov news, do it opening night or whatever.
Exactly. Do it after you win.
Because they don't have Tkachuk there to sell tickets. Let's be honest. Barkov's not there. Not saying Barkov pushes all the ticket sales for the casual fans, but they know who he is. Bob's kind of that next guy and that next name person that the casual fan base would know. And
kind of throw this one out there. If you beat your former goaltender, what better way is to say, hey, yeah, Bob's our guy for another 4 years.
So you get out there on the stress fan. Zito would love it. Zito uses his hands, some word salad words.
Exactly.
It's like, yay, Bobby.
Exactly. Everybody goes nuts and it's fun. No, I mean, look, I could see it. I think they'll wait on it. It depends on the market, how everything is set up. But, I definitely see him finishing his career with a Panther.
Just to interrupt you there for a second too, Jim. They've got the option here with the holiday freeze and then the Olympic break. Like Bob, unfortunately, won't be going to play in the Olympics with Russia. So you got a lot of time. You got a lot of time here, I think, with his agency and team to sit down. I don't think they're like, we need a time and a date now. I think that window's really open.
Yeah, it is. And don't forget the holiday freeze is until I think December 19th, 20th. So we still got a ways away for that. And again, that's when we'll see a lot of stuff maybe happen again.
I remember he locked in Gustav Forsling at the trade deadline with also, which was a weird one, I thought at the time, Jonah Gadjevich. So he did that,
Yeah, so again, Zito works on his timeline, but I wouldn't be shocked to see a Bob extension sometime during the year. And I think he's a perfect fit for this team, and he's earned that $10.5 million now that he was making. I know like you said, a lot of people knocked the contract, but hey, you know what? Guys, money in the playoffs. I wouldn't want another guy right now in the playoffs. Guy gets it done. And even when he has bad games or the team doesn't win, he finds a way to shut it down when the game matters most. And look, to me, I think I voted for Connor McDavid in 2024. I think if they had swept or 1-5, I'm going Bob.
Yes.
Just because he was the MVP. And it's funny because I know they lost in 2023 and his final wasn't the greatest. But to me, he was the playoff MVP up to that point.
Until the Vegas when we
until he ran out of gas. But he was that.
That was
the
John Sebastian Jaguar that I know you probably grew up on, and I did as well. Seeing that was unreal. That Toronto and Carolina series.
Yeah. Well, we'll save that conversation for off air because I still have some thoughts about how come Martin Brodeur didn't win the Conn Smythe Trophy.
Yeah, we can talk about that. And I just want to add, if we're wrapping up on Bob, I think they believe in him from the ownership to the management, all the way down to the goaltending department. And some people might scoff at this, but I want to mention his name. Rob Tallis is very respected around the league. When Roberto Luongo went into the Hall of Fame, he said, I need Rob Tallis to be there when I'm inducted.
That's huge. So before we wrap up here on this podcast, I got to get your thoughts. Where do you think the Panthers finish and the injuries kind of affect everything?
Yeah, so we were starting to put together our division preview shows. I had Toronto finishing 1. I was kind of like putting Florida around that 2 spot. You're going to be surprised on this. I don't know if many people are doing this. I have Montreal at 3. I had Tampa Bay at wildcard 1 and Ottawa at wildcard 2. Now I've got to rejig stuff. I'm going to kind of keep Toronto where they're at. But again, that was right the same day that we heard about Joseph Woll. And I'm a big Woll believer. I know you're Team USA, and I'm like, I think they need Woll to supplement Stars. I know they got the Hilda Beast. We'll see what he has. But I think that kind of can affect Toronto a little bit here. We'll see if Woll comes back in a month or 2. They should be fine. But again, we have to see that play out. So I had Florida 2. Now I'm thinking of it's wild to think, but I might bump a Montreal up to 2 because I think Montreal is going to come flying out of the gate. I think they're going to be first or second in the Atlantic Division. They have 5 guys, I think, Jim, on their team that are trying to play for spots in the Olympics. And I think all that momentum they built off of last year, having the best first line in hockey. Nick Suzuki was a top 5 NHL player after the calendar year changed to 2025. I believe in Sam Montembeault and some of the things they're doing there on the back end. I know they're a 2C short. I know you talked to Habs Nathan and things like that. So they need to figure that out relatively quickly, whether it's a Rados, Vic, or someone else that they can bring in there just to supplement of what Suzuki and that top line does. But I'm having Florida now, and I'm still kind of going through my head. Wild card 1 to wild card 2, but I love when the Panthers are in that underdog role. So if they're battling down there with Ottawa and the Rangers or Columbus or some surprise team I guess I'll give some credit to Detroit if Gibson stays healthy. But I think you're kind of going to be battling with those teams down there. But when they come into the playoffs, you get Matthew Tkachuk going well. Any additions to the lineup if Barkov will not be returning? as well for the playoffs. I think you're going to have a very dangerous wild card team, and maybe you play a team like Toronto or Montreal, or if someone believes in Ottawa even. And I think they wouldn't like that matchup if it was against the Panthers in the first round.
No, I agree with that. And I think I can't.
Or Carolina.
Carolina would definitely not like that.
Over in the Metro side.
I don't think Jersey would like that either. I think there's some teams that wouldn't like that matchup. And I got to throw this one in here for you. I think Boston's going to have a bounce back year. I'm not saying playoff team, but I think Swayman in camp, no distractions. They can get their system set up now. Players can buy into everything. There's not a lot of noise. I think Boston.
Swayman as a dark horse Vezina. Are you with me there, Jim?
I like it. I like the pick. Dark horse. I like it.
And my dark horse President's Trophy is the Blues. We'll talk that on After Dark this year.
Yeah, we'll talk about that on After Dark. But yeah, no, I think the Panthers to me are still a playoff team. I think if you told them sign them up now for wild card 1 or wild card 2, I think they'll take it with the injuries that they have. I think they're okay with that because we've seen.
And look at the division they're in, Jim. It's a tough division.
Right. And to me, it proves they don't care where they finish. Like, they don't care. They don't. They could be first. They could be wild card 2. They could be third. It doesn't matter.
We copied that from Tampa Bay.
Exactly. They didn't care either. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. The state of Florida is in great shape with the Panthers, with the Lightning. Florida, love to see South Florida rocking. Always fan of hockey down there. I'm a big fan of yours, Kirby. Thanks for coming on and doing this, man.
Appreciate you, Jim. We're going to have to do some old school wrestling stuff, pop culture stuff. We have a lot of common interests off air, and I think that's why we click so well on air. And if you guys haven't caught Jim over on our Cats and Rats channel, make sure to subscribe over on YouTube. He joins us. Like, you were there when I wasn't even in town. I was in Medicine Hat, Alberta, coming back, and all that Brad Marchand news was breaking and the Aaron Ekblad stuff. So you came on and helped out our channel. I really appreciate you for that.
No, I appreciate you, man. Guys, Full Press NHL podcast. Got my man Kirby Lupul here, Cats and Rats podcast. Please subscribe to our channel. Please subscribe to his channel. Let's build this huge community. And it was a pleasure talking Florida Panthers hockey with you, buddy.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it.
Guys, take care. Again, Full Press NHL podcast up on YouTube. Subscribe, like. We'll be back again real soon.
Full Press hockey coverage with Jim Biringer.